Have you ever driven over a brand new bridge or past a newly built school and just thought to yourself, how in the world did they pay for that? I mean, it's a massive expense, right? Well, the answer involves this century-old financial secret that actually costs the federal government billions. So let's pull back the curtain and see how America really builds.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at how our public spaces get financed in the first place. Then we'll dive into the government's favorite IOU. After that, we'll uncover the tax-free secret that makes this whole thing work, reveal its $29 billion price tag, and finally, we'll get into the big debate over control, priorities, and grants.
Okay, so first up, the huge challenge of building big. Let's start with the most basic question, which is also the hardest one to answer. A city can't just, write a check for something that costs hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. That's just not how their budgets work. Think about it. These kinds of projects need a giant upfront pile of cash. So to make that happen, state and local governments need a special tool to raise that kind of money. They have to borrow, but they do it in a very, very specific way.
And that special way of borrowing? Well, it has a name, the municipal bond.
The easiest way to think of a bond is just as a formal IOU. When a city needs cash, it issues these bonds. Then investors, that could be people like you and me or big investment funds, buy them. They're basically lending their money to the government with a promise that they'll get paid back over time, plus a little extra in interest. So the whole process is pretty straightforward, right? The government says, I need money. Investors buy the IOU. The city gets the cash to build the cool new project. And then, over a bunch of years, it pays the investors back with interest. Seems simple enough, but there's a secret ingredient here, a powerful one, that makes these particular IOUs incredibly attractive to investors.
And this brings us to the real secret sauce of the whole system, the powerful little incentive that makes this entire market go round.
Okay, here's where the magic happens. Normally, if you invest your money somewhere and you earn interest, you've got to share a piece of that with Uncle Sam, right? Federal taxes. But with municipal bonds, that rule just goes right out the window. The interest you earn is completely 100% exempt from federal income tax.
And this is the absolute game changer. This isn't some little loophole. It is a deliberate feature of our tax law, and it's been around for over 100 years. This one simple rule has absolutely enormous financial consequences.
So let's talk about just how enormous those consequences are. We're not talking about a small perk here. This is a massive federal policy, and it comes with a seriously hefty price tag.
In 2017 alone, the federal government missed out on an estimated $29 billion in tax revenue because of this one exemption. That is a huge number. This is what's known in policy circles as a tax expenditure. It's basically money the government chooses not to collect, all to encourage a specific kind of behavior.
And like I said, this has been the law of the land since 1913, which makes it a really fundamental piece of how America pays for its infrastructure. But how exactly does giving investors a tax break help a local government build a bridge? What's the connection?
Well, it's actually a pretty clever chain reaction. Since investors get to keep all of the interest, no taxes, remember, they're willing to accept a lower interest rate from the city than they would from, say, a corporation. And for the city, a lower interest rate means a smaller loan payment. So, in effect, the federal government is subsidizing these local projects by giving up tax revenue, which makes it way cheaper for your hometown to borrow money and build things.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, right? This leads to a major policy debate. Is this indirect, hands-off subsidy really the best way for the federal government to support local infrastructure?
So the main criticism is all about control. Because pretty much any qualifying state or local project can be financed this way, the federal government doesn't really get to pick and choose which projects get this subsidy. It's an open-ended commitment, which makes it hard to budget for and doesn't let the feds direct money toward what they see as national priorities, like maybe energy conservation projects, for example. This table really lays out the two different philosophies. Take a look at federal control. With a tax break, it's indirect, kind of hands-off. With a direct grant, the government can be super targeted. For budgeting, the tax break is an open-ended cost, while a grant has a fixed upfront price. And probably most important, for project choice, the tax break system lets local priorities lead the way, whereas grants let the federal government push its own agenda.
So, it all leaves us with this fundamental question. Is it better to give local governments a flexible, cheap way to borrow for whatever they think is important through a tax break, or is it better for the federal government to provide money directly through grants to make sure its own strategic goals are met? There's no easy answer, but but it is a debate that shapes every single new school, road, and park in the country.